Hello, everyone. This is a corporate presentation, high level, on First Nordic Metals, and we're focused on Sweden and Finland. We'll walk you through a high level summary of the opportunity here, and then we'll get into more information. And we are, again, focused on building Europe's next gold camp. I'll pass it off to our president. I'm the CEO, and Taj Singh, and I'll pass it off to our president, Adam Sigelski, who will lead us through a few slides, and we'll be doing this together. Adam, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Gorm, for having us. The Nordic advantage, and I guess this is very relevant to what we're talking about and where we're recording. The leading producer of metals in Europe, a jurisdiction that only really opened up to foreign capital and at exploration maybe 25, 30 years ago. So as we call it, one of the final frontiers of greenstone belts and exciting, mineral exploration opportunities. Sweden has a long history of mining, very secure tenure, fantastic, stable taxation rates, no mineral tax, 20% corporate tax. This is, internationally, this is fantastic. Very low political risk and, ranked by the Fraser Institute as one of the top jurisdictions. And this is why we love operating here in Sweden and Finland. When you go to Stockholm, we're about an hour north flight, get off at the Lixla, stop at Lixla and drive up to the property here. Fantastic road access, fantastic, access to, green energy and hydroelectric power, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. We've got two mining jurisdictions or two belts. You've got the Skellefteå VMS base metal belt, which has a long history of mining here, 30 to 40 existing, currently producing or past producing deposits. And then we've got this north-south greenstone belt called the Goldline Belt. And this came together over many years of consolidation. It's not like this was just, put together last year. All the original work here goes back to 2014, where the Barsele project was discovered, and the Goldline projects, or the projects to the north and south of Barsele here, were staked in 2016-17. So a lot of work has gone in to put together this 104,000 hectare, 100-kilometer first order strike property package. And very unique to have, 100 kilometers or 100,000 hectares, covering this entire belt, surrounding a 2.4 million ounce deposit that's joint ventured with the best mining company in the world. And on the belt, we've got past producing and existing deposits. You've got the Svardeliden mine, which is at the southern end of our belt, which is an operating mill very close to our recent discovery. And you've got Boliden mining that's just initiated mining sort of just east of the Barsele project. So some recently permitted projects, fantastic underexplored belt, and a very large land package that we control 100% of. If you look at that land package and you compare it to some of the other greenstone belts in the world, on the top here, you can see what our property package looks like. If you compare that to the Abitibi in Quebec, you would have 8 to 10, active mines, all feeding a central processing facility. You'd have 100 million ounces of production. And this is really what excites us, is we've got a discovery of 2.4 million ounces here, that's had over, significant capital put into it. And, we strongly believe you're going to find a second, third, maybe fourth deposit on this belt over time. And so, this is really the unique opportunity of First Nordic Metals, is this incredible land package that you really can't assemble in some of these other parts of the world anymore. Our capital structure, pretty straightforward, 263 million shares outstanding, market cap approximately 150 million today. Insiders, about 18%, institutional investors, about 40%, and Agnico Eagle, 11%. So you've got just under 70% of the shares held in pretty tight hands. And you've got a very healthy float of, about 80 million shares through 31% of the distribution. We did recently raise $12 million, and that those funds are going to our 100% owned projects and our mineral exploration activities for 2025 into 2026. And we do have about $8 million in warrants that could come in at any time as well.
Well, I'll step in now and do a few slides here, guys, on Barsele. It's, again, more of an executive summary, and then we can get into more details later. The Barsele project, this is a plan map here shown of the project. Very large land package, 25,000 hectare land package. I'll just mainly focus for right now on the resource area. The resource area here is shown in the red, 3 main zones. I'll get into details on that later. A couple of the other regional targets are also shown here that have had some work done on them. This is a 55% for Agnico, 45% for us, JV. We are fully carried in terms of costs and have been since 2015, since Agnico entered into this joint venture. Agnico spent approximately $60 million, which has entailed lots of early stage exploration work, but primarily in terms of diamond drilling, close to about 175,000 meters of drilling and moving towards about 500 holes. So a lot of data here, very well documented and understood deposit here. And this current structure, the way it works is that once Agnico puts a pre-feasibility study out, the joint venture goes to 70-30, and then we have to start paying our costs. What will likely happen and what we can get into is we're currently in discussions, and discussions have been going on for a while, of us to become the operators of this project or to jointly advance it with Agnico, kind of more aggressively and quicker towards development and an eventual construction decision. So we can talk about that after. Also, I just want to note one last point is this outline around the resource area. That is a national designation of mining that was given federally to the project in 2021. What it essentially means is it's a fast track to getting a mining permit. So not a lot of projects have gotten this in Sweden. It's very strategic. This is one of the few strategic projects that the country has now designated. And obviously, when we move towards that, the permitting, that's going to be very, very helpful to have that. A couple of highlights here. This is a long section of the deposit. Key points here. It's a big, big deposit, 3.5 kilometers long, 3 different zones. The Avon and Central Zone all have a starter pit and then move underground. The Shirazin Zone is underground, is an underground deposit. What you'll also see here is in the black, you're seeing some of the best intercepts, just to give you a taste of things in terms of grade and width. And then the gray kind of highlighted intercepts are showing the deepest intercepts. So our belief here is this deposit is now, the average resource depth is about 550 meters. We have actually hit to 925 meters, and the rock unit that hosts the mineralization extends to 2 kilometers. That was done by geophysics, that analysis. And so these kinds of deposits as well, it's an orogenic gold system and a greenstone belt. These deposits, the fluids in these deposits are mantly derivative. So these deposits can go very deep. 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers is typical. If you extend this mineralization down to 1 kilometer, you get almost a doubling of the current 2.4 million ounce resource. So the very straightforward way for this to grow, and we strongly believe that, is to continue to drill at depth and allow the deposit to extend. A couple of typical cross sections here. These are through the Central Zone, the Shirazin Zone. The big thing you see here, guys, is the width of the deposit. This is not your typical 2-3 meter vein. We're talking about effective widths now down here of, overall 200-300 meters. Like you can only imagine how that helps in terms of bulk underground mining costs underground. So these stopes will be very wide, very highly productive. So the unit cost per ton is going to be very low. And that gives you some kind of flavor of things. And then a couple of other characteristics to finish off. I mean, you can look in your own time at the resource table, but high level, the open pit grades are about 1.3 to 1.4. Again, those started, and then again, the bulk of the project is underground. Underground grades anywhere from 2.5 to 3 grams per ton. You see some other, just in that table below, other operations around the world actually operating, have been operating for decades. And then a couple of other projects on there that will become mines. You see that Barsele stacks up extremely well at about 3 grams per ton underground. So that's just the underground grades. And the reason those are important is they're good analogies for Barsele. They are same mining method, similar style of deposit geometry and size, same host rock generally. So those are very good analogies. I've talked about the favorable geometry and dimensions would bring the unit cost down. Metallurgy is also important. Clean, simple metallurgy here. about mid-90s kind of recoveries for gold, and we think maybe we can even improve upon that. But even more is a high percentage of the gold is actually recovered by gravity. So that means kind of your flow sheet, operating costs and capital costs can be actually quite a bit lower because so much gravity is covered, so much gold can be recovered so quickly. I've talked about the resource upside at depth. There's also resource upside along strike. We've only covered kind of 3.5 kilometers of the 7-kilometer long corridor, and we already know that there's potential other satellite deposits on that that would grow past the existing 2.4 million ounce resource. But again, this is a summary. This project package is a lot to offer. And I just want to now talk about very quickly is an operating mine in Sweden called the Björkdal mine. It gives us some context of the advantages, what we believe are strong advantages of operating in northern Sweden. This is the Björkdal mine, about a couple hundred kilometers east of the Barsele project, has been operating since the 1980s, and it's having a very strong year. But what's really important to note is it's a very similar style to Barsele, but you can see the 2024 resource grade and 2024 unit costs, mining, processing, G&A, that were published by the company in their technical report are shown here. And you can see one thing that stands out is the grade is much, much lower than Barsele, but they're still making money. And that's driven primarily here by this underground mining cost of $25. If you had that in Canada, that number would likely be $35, $40, $45. This is in USD, all of this. Processing, same thing. Big driver of the processing, 3 cents a kilowatt hour for power. Probably one of the best I've seen in the world, and I've operated in many regions. So that really is a key highlight and advantage for operating in this region. And again, our recovery is very clean, simple flow sheet, slightly different than when they have at Björkdal. Still very good recoveries. But again, this gives you some context that Barsele is a mine today and has a lot of room to make a lot of margin at even at $2,000 gold, not to mention what you're seeing in the gold price today. And just to close off, kind of my part of this is the depth of these greenstone belt deposits. I've talked about it before. 2 kilometers, kilometer and a half is very typical here. At Barsele, again, we're at a little less than 600 meters, so we believe we're just scratching the surface here, and it has extreme depth potential, which is a straightforward way to grow the resource in the mine life. So that's the first part of the story, guys. The big part of the story that I think is going to really change things here in the short term is our targets. We strongly believe I don't think there's another junior out there that has the land position we have of 100 kilometers of strike on a, very, very high potential greenstone belt. Adam will now walk you through several targets we have that we believe are Barsele lookalikes and could eventually become a Barsele. And again, on our 100% owned ground. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Tosh. So again, big land package. We've got a fantastic deposit that will be a mine one day. And so if you go, back in time a little bit, and you go to the bottom of this of our land package at Pawbacken, there was a company called Dragon Mining that started a 400,000 ounce open pit mine about 4 kilometers from here, and they built, invested in the mill. They mined that deposit out right kind of where the mouse is there. And that 400,000 ounces obviously was, the first, sort of the most meaningful deposit regionally here for us. And so 4 kilometers north, we found this, another 4 kilometer structurally controlled corridor here. We did some very early work where we did these shallow holes. These blue dots represent your base of till drilling. So, nothing is exposed at surface besides boulders here and there. So you find a mineralized boulder. You do some geophysics, you've got this massive structure. And in 2021, we completed all these regional holes and we started to get, 0.1, 0.2, you're really onto something. That's how Rupert Resources found Ikari. They chased this mineralization, and now we've obviously hit the structure. These 4 purple numbers represent, 2, 3, 5 grams per ton at surface. So about 15 meters below your surface exposure. And so you just, you initiate diamond drilling. And, I think on our 3rd drill hole, we hit a discovery of 22.5 meters of 2.5 grams, which is more significant than the original Barsele discovery hole. So here we are in a system where we know there was an active mine 4 kilometers away. And now we've hit this mineralized structure. We tested underneath it. We proved 2 years ago or 3 years ago that there was over 800 meters of mineralized gold here. And we were really only about 100, 150 meters below surface. So very, very shallow. And this year, given all the work that we've done and the funding we've completed, we've initiated a 10,000 meter program here. We're going to be testing over 300 meters or 3,000 meters of strike, or 3 kilometers of strike. And we're chasing a system that we know is one of, what we think is one of the most exciting new discoveries in Europe that really has been forgotten over the last few years. So 10,000 meters here, results will be probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We'll start to see some of the early results, and very excited to be, stepping out on this after, making this discovery over 3 years ago. Now, if you move north, that past system was a 4.5 kilometer structure. Now you've got a 5.5 kilometer geochemical anomaly, so only about 5 kilometers north of where we just were. We've covered this area with extensive sampling, 6,700 samples from 22 to 24, and this, from a geochemical perspective, lights up with very high, pathfinder elements here. This is how we initially found Barsele. You chase these, you create these anomalies, you identify these anomalies, you do base of till drilling. So we've completed 200 meters of base of till here. So again, we're just puncturing the surface to understand, where this is coming from. We'll have that data probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Those are at the assay lab, and that will determine the specificity of our, targets, and as that evolves over the next 2-3 months. So we've got 10,000 meters at Aida. We've got, 5 to 10,000 meters here, depending on the data we get. And now if you move further north, north of the Barsele project, you've got this third multi-kilometric 5 kilometer long geochemical anomaly. Again, almost 5,000, B horizon till samples completed here over the years. And again, almost identical to what you'd see at the Barsele deposit early days. So that's 3 structures that you see that are over 5 kilometers in length. And this is completed. We have completed base of till drilling here and expecting those results again in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So we've got a lot of work to do with our targeting on new properties. We've got these 3 advanced targets that are going to go towards drilling. And we recently discovered another 4 multi-kilometric geochemical anomalies on the rest of the belt. So this is again north of Barsele, 4 more geochem anomalies that are spectacular in size. So we've got many seasons of work to complete here before we, exhaust the mineral potential. We've got probably 60% of the ground covered now, and in the next year, I think we'll be doing 20,000 samples this year, and really just building on the database. And then this kind of kicks off the end of the presentation. We'll review, I guess, the team that we've got involved. So I'm president of the company. I was the founder of Goldline Public. I helped a team that had put this land package together back in 2019 take this public. And we've raised, I think, now we've raised over $35 million for the project in total. And 12, 20, there's been about $30 million raised of the project, and about, significant capital going into the ground, not including what you've got at the Barsele project. And I was involved, founder of Caden Resources back in 2012 that was acquired by Agnico Eagle for $210 million. And I've been in the capital markets for the balance of my career, working with great mining entrepreneurs. Benjamin Gelber worked with me at Caden Resources, and he moved on and was part of the original discovery team at Keegan Resources. After putting that into commercial production, he moved on to Barrick Gold. But I mean, I think early exploration and discovery is in Ben's blood, and that's when he joined us a few years ago to take advantage of this massive land package that we had, which is one of the best, most exciting organized land packages we've been involved in. And John Aaron joined us recently as VP Corporate Development. We work together at Keegan and Caden Resources. Has been involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of financing, and we look forward to leveraging the team. Taj, maybe continue from here.
Sure, yeah. My background, guys, is I'm an engineer, bachelor's and master's, mineral processing and metallurgy. I've been involved in the mining space for my entire career, probably about 25 years. I was most recently co-founder and president and CEO of Discovery Silver for about close to 6 years. We took the company public and then took it to a market cap of close to $800 million, raised a couple $100 million on the way, and it is the world's largest silver project. It is located in Mexico, and that is moving towards construction. I was also a founding team member and lead independent director at GT Gold, which we took public in early 2017, and a few years later, after having some very good success, we sold the project to Newmont Mining for $450 million, and that's project is a big copper gold system located in British Columbia, Canada. And then I had a role at an operating producer called Timmins Gold, located in northwest Mexico. Put that project online, built it, and then it was ultimately producing about 150,000 ounces of gold per year. That was then acquired later on down the road by Argonaut Gold, and then subsequently by Alamos Gold. I was also an analyst at Macquarie Capital Markets, located in Toronto, but Macquarie's the largest bank in Australia. Learned a lot and saw many projects over those years, doing due diligence evaluations. And then I started off my career, the first decade of my career, at Vale, which is obviously one of the largest mining companies in the world, big diversified base metals company, but got to spend my time at many operations and was involved in pretty significant capital expansion projects as well as mine builds. So that's my background, and I'll just round it off now, guys. I'm talking about board members. Again, a very varied and strong board here that we believe covers us completely to move this project and the story forward. We've got our chairman, Toby Pierce, who's a geologist. He was former CEO for over 10 years at Tag Oil. Is currently CEO of Somerset Energy. He was head of research at GMP Securities in London, and he was actually an original founder of Goldline Resources along with Adam, which is one of the predecessor companies of First Nordic. And he's been very, very actively involved in junior mining for essentially his whole career. We recently added Henrik Lundin, who's also an oil and gas engineer, a Swedish citizen. He was also involved in the kind of launch of Goldline Resources, and having him in Europe is really hopefully going to help our exposure there and his ability to introduce us to networks, etc. Mark Legault came on when we did the deal between Barsele Minerals and Goldline. He's spent 35 years at Agnico Eagle, retiring at one of the very highest levels as his senior vice president. He knows both of our projects very intimately, as well as many other of Agnico's projects. And his ability to, obviously his relationships with Agnico will help us. And then we have Gary Cope, who was the founder of Barsele Minerals, and he was there for obviously 10 years until we came along and the merger between Goldline and Barsele happened. But he's been successful too. Definitely, he sold Orco Silver to Coeur Mining for close to $300 million, and he's obviously a very big shareholder and supporter. And then we've, in 2024, brought Jeff Couch on. Jeff Couch was head of investment banking for Europe for BMO Capital Markets, very significant and senior role there. Also worked at Credit Suisse, Citigroup. He's based in London, so again, that increases our European exposure. And he's got a very good experience for what we need down the road. He's currently acting CEO of a couple of companies that are operated by Orion Resource Partners, so a private company. So again, a very well-rounded team. Adam, anything to add before we close off?
No, that's good.
Perfect.
All right. So, I mean, you guys covered your careers fairly well there in a quick period of time, but I think I have a few follow-ups to start. So, Adam, if I start with you, can you just describe the story of why you got involved with Goldline in the first place? Because when I sit down and look at this and compare it to Finland, in Finland, paradoxically, they're sort of ahead of Sweden, which is strange because Sweden has been a mining nation for longer than Finland. Sweden has been richer than Finland. Finland has probably been Sweden for a long time, and now Finland is sort of ahead in the industry, in exploration for sure, and discovering new deposits before Sweden. So how come this hasn't been looked at properly before? I mean, what you're doing in Sweden, and what was the sort of, how did you grab this opportunity in the first place?
Yeah, so listen, I've been through the gold cycle. I think, early 90s, mid 90s, I started to get interested in junior mining stocks. You had this big tech run, and that tech run led to the eventual, the debt markets dropping interest rates and motivating people to buy homes. And then what that led to is printing of money. And so, we fell into the rabbit hole of these exciting gold opportunities. When you see massive money printing, you see this revaluation in gold. So I've always been a gold bug, back, I think Briex hooked me originally. So, I'm a true, junior mining, fanatic, and just seeing the riches and the wealth that's been created over, one or two good projects, right? So you lived it. And so 2015, 16, I had left, the group in Vancouver that I was working with. Caden was sold to Agnico. I was building a technology company. And then, you're watching more money being printed, and then you see what's happening with stimulating the markets, and then even just the trillions of dollars that were printed in America. It was in my ear that gold's going to go again, and so it just sort of worked out that in 2016, after this discovery was made, you've got gold prices drop, and so all these things are really just cycles where the market gets hot and gold equities are funded, and then they fall apart, and then governments aren't permitting mines, and it's all timing. And so Sweden wasn't really effectively using maybe the permitting process and the opportunity to develop these projects when those windows of good gold prices was at the right level, or mineral prices were at the right level. And then so all these properties, which were controlled by B2Gold and Orion and Dragon, they were dropped in 2016, 17, and Eric Jensen and EMX Royalty and Toby Pierce and Henrik Lundin put this whole package together. And so in 2019, I was approached to become CEO. We found the right opportunity to take it public. And, along that journey, we acquired another project, which we didn't talk about today, which is the Oijärvi project from Agnico Eagle. So the excitement of having a 80,000 hectare land package surrounding a known deposit, knowing that Agnico was there, it was too obvious that you can't really put these things into, you can't build this with technology. You can't just assemble these land packages. You can't, define this geology that's been there for a long time. So it's a very unique opportunity. And I thought, wow, what a fantastic dream to chase. And then sort of through the cycles of the war in Russia and a restructuring of the company, Taj and I both, I think, chasing the lithium dream a little bit and building companies, exploration development companies in lithium. We met each other, and we turned out we kind of live 15 minutes apart, and we both into the same things. And it was like, hey, why don't you join this idea? And I sold him on the vision. So that took a few months, but after his diligence and, hesitation, he said, listen, this is too good of an opportunity. And he joined us in 2023, August, September. We raised $1 million. And then Gary Cope called and said, hey guys, it's a difficult market. Why don't we work together? He actually, I think, offered Taj the job of CEO, and Taj had just raised $1 million with our investors. And so he said, that can't work. So why don't we just put this stuff together? And that's kind of where we are. And since, for the last 12 months, we have a very exciting story to tell. You've got these two companies that together had 300 million market cap in 2020. And you've got a gold price that's now moved another $500 or $700 since we started. So, in the next 12 months, gold will be probably steadily over 3,000. We'll be drilling multiple targets. And that's kind of how this whole, adventure started.
Perfect. And Tosh, you're an interesting guy too, to say the least. You've had two sales that was, to my understanding, that is Discovery and GT. So you brought those projects with the guys you were working with up to, a distinguished resource. But where did you get in terms of engineering? Because that's your educational background, and you style yourself that way, right? So just explain those two exits that was pre-production, and then also talk about Timmins, your role there, where you actually got to, you went through the build the entire way, right?
Yeah, so listen, for Discovery, I think what was there is we started that with just an idea of an early stage exploration project that had a lot of high potential, but hadn't had a lot of work done on it. It was going through a little bit of permitting issues, but we knew that things were going slow. We quickly pivoted. We had cash. We had a team. We acquired this asset from Lavon Resources called Cordero. We acquired it for, again, I think something like $5 to $10 million, and we had a vision of it, of how to kind of re-engineer the mine plan and drill it needed quite a bit more drilling to allow us to show our vision. It already had a lot of data, which was great. Those are the kinds of environments I like when a project has a lot of data on it. It already had an existing resource, but we re-envisioned it as kind of a high-grade silver project, a silver polymetallic, and then an option to get it much bigger. And like total resource now is over 1 billion ounces of silver equivalent. So 60-70% of that is just silver, and the rest is zinc lead. But big project. But that allowed them then now go acquire a mine from Newmont. The size of the company was so large that they were able to do that. A gold mine in Timmins, Ontario. So that was one kind of big success, and I truly still believe the Cordero will be the world's largest silver mine. Period. It's Mexico has had a bit of slowdowns in terms of permitting, but it looks like things are turning around. And then a GT Gold is again the right place, right time. Very good drilling success. Sold it pre-resource to Newmont for big ticket, like I mentioned. So that was great. And that's in an area of very, very mountainous terrain, and you've only got a few months per year of drilling. But it all worked out. And that area, that kind of Golden Triangle area of British Columbia, was hot at that time. So that sweet spot kind of with pre-resource or just a resource, moving it towards a development decision or construction decision is really what I feel like my skill set's good for, and I actually just personally like. But again, I have been operator for many years. With Timmins Gold, it was again an old mine that we brought back and put the crushing circuit in. It was a heap leach operation, got it going. Those are pretty low capex, which is fantastic. Mexico has that great environment for starting these heap leach operations at a very cheap price. There was already an existing pit, but we drilled a lot more to continue to expand the resource. So that worked out well. And then a big part of my experience was my first years as an engineer, almost a decade. I joined Inco, which was one of the world's largest nickel companies other than Norilsk. And then nickel got hot in kind of 07 and Vale acquired us. And so all of a sudden you got Vale and Inco together, and they really kind of take care of their young engineers. They got to take us to all these operations around the world, seeing big builds, going 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers underground, seeing big mills get created, big expansion projects. So that was definitely really interesting. And then, just to round out, when I was at Macquarie, I got to see probably 50 projects a year. So all in various regions around the world. So you learn a lot, and also being on the capital market side, on the research side there. So I was lucky enough to be able to have all these kinds of experiences that rounded out my profile. So pretty fortunate for that.
Excellent. So one thing we always ask, and you guys are entrepreneurs as well, and you want to make some money and have some fun and do interesting things, right? So how much of your personal net worth approximately would you say is allocated with the success of First Nordic at this point in time?
Adam, we're probably 4 or 5% between each of us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you get these opportunities very rarely, so I think, yeah, it's good to be aggressive in your personal portfolio, and you can't do this for, just the salary you're making. We're here based on, I think very meaningful equity investments for us, and percentages of net worth are just a function of your risk tolerance, right? So, and the stage of your life you're in. But I mean, this is definitely, probably the most meaningful opportunity I've been involved in my career, and easily the best team I've worked with. So yeah, I think it's a healthy percentage of our net worth, and definitely you wake up very early in the morning worrying about every single aspect of the business 7 days a week until this is sold or moved on. So you have enough that you definitely can't sleep at night if you're dropping balls. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Like 18% is the insider ownership, Gorham, just to get back to your question. A big portion of that is Gary Cope, but between Adam, me, and a few other directors, that's the remaining, more than 10%. So, and Adam and I make up the larger portion of that. So yeah, as Adam noted, it's definitely important and significant for us, and that's where our kind of win is on this is in the shares. So we're shareholders just like everyone else, and I think that's important. And investors want to see that, like, you have skin in the game.
Well, not only that, you're these businesses have risk associated with them, and you have to manage those risks all the time, whether it's political, whether it's environmental, or whether it's social. And you've got to stay on top of everything. So being motivated is very important um, to execute properly. And not only that, just honestly communicating the story. It's it means so much more to you. And whether we're communicating to you and your network of people, or whether we're communicating to Agnico, it's the same thing. This is a very important project for us, and we treat it with the greatest respect, and a very unique opportunity. We're drilling off 80 kilometers of strike around a future mine. So very rarely do you have that opportunity in this business. So yeah, we're highly motivated and excited every day about this project.
So a bit of a recap here. I mean, you guys did a raise. I think it was touching on 12 million Canadian. Can you just outline what the structure of that raise was? Who participated in that raise? People are aware.
Yeah, it was a bought deal financing from Haywood Securities. It started with some core long-term shareholders, institutional and high net worth, that were are supportive of most of the financings we do. There was a new institution that participated out of New York, that very influential fund that has committed to continuing to finance and fund the potential consolidation of the belt with Agnico. So it was important to bring in the right investors that aren't really just looking for a well-priced financing or sort of a hot story. It's more strategic people that are going to help us take the next step in the consolidation of the Goldline Belt and support any other transactions that we're interested in. And then the balance, came through Ventum and Haywood Securities. Brought, we had a lot of, I think, existing shareholders at both firms. They're both involved in the restructuring and the development of the story. So I think it was pretty much 80%, existing retail support, and then a massive institutional strategic investor.
And to note, there was insider participation was probably about 10%, and Adam and I made up the majority of that participation.
Good. Perfect. It's always a good temperature check to see who participated in the last race, to sort of get a sense of what's going on. So I think, and this sounds very good to my ears. We'll get into Agnico and sort of the details about that a little bit later. But right now, I just want to just run the cap structure. And they're a big shareholder, I guess the biggest individual shareholder in the company, right? So what is their stated objective with the equity investment, and what's sort of your communication like? If we just deal with that at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take this one, I guess. Yeah. We, just for full transparency, and the way we work with Agnico is, Agnico's been project level shareholder for a very long time. Since they came in here, their specific joint venture was, we will drill it and we will own equity on the project level. And that's what they've done for over a decade, I think 2014 or 15, and maybe 9 years. And so they had never become shareholders of Barsele. We at Goldline acquired the OERV project, and we paid them a total cost of about $10 million in cash and shares. And it was a predominantly cash based investment. And when we merged the companies, before the ink dried on the merger, we were in Agnico's office, specifically talking about what else they want to do, what are their plans on Barsele, and we made our intent clear that we wanted to become, we wanted to take over the project, or at least find some, clarity of the next steps. And then we still owed them a certain amount of money, and they became shareholders through the conversion of debt. And they said, listen, we're very excited about what's been built here. It's an opportunity to support our initiatives. It wasn't a cash investment, but essentially, we owed them that cash. So the conversion led them to become, the shareholders they are today. And I think we're one of the more significant joint venture partners of Agnico in their pretty extensive portfolio. So I think they have 40 or 50 companies, but I don't think many of the companies they have sort of the size and scope potential of what we're doing here on the Goldline Belt. So I think we're very important partners for them. And we communicate with them regularly. So it's been a great relationship. It's you're dealing with the world's best mining company, so it's always great to talk about how disciplined they are. But this was supposed to be their next mine in 2014-15. They had a directional change with the M&A they did in Canada, and they're highly committed to being focused on their current plans. So we have a great relationship. It's just, we would like to demonstrate that this should be moved in a direction that's beneficial for us as a company. I think for the value of the project, for the project and the community, it's a very unique opportunity to have such a perfect setting for a mine. And we're making that, we're communicating that to Agnico on a regular basis.
Perfect. And then regarding the cash balance, going into the year, you guys had sort of 12 million Canadian, say 8 million euros or a bit less. Could you give me a sense of what it's at currently? Because you've been expanding a little bit, so people just get the most recent cash balance, and then we'll talk about budget, sort of high-level budget at this point in time.
Yeah, listen, we'll wait for the Q4 financials have to come out in Q1 financials, Goran, but high level, we're planning to do 25,000 meters this year of drilling, hopefully even more, but say 25. It's about $200 or so a meter for diamond drilling. That's the primary cost this year, is going to be into the ground. And so that's say circa $5 million US. So, 7 Canadian or what have you. That's will be spread out pretty evenly through the year. So you're looking at say, 1.5 Canadian to 2 spent per quarter for the rest of the year. That should be a pretty even run rate.
Okay, and what portion? What's the sort of the fixed cost structure look like? And that's partially G&A, I guess, corporate in North America, and whatever you have in Sweden as well, and then holding costs. Although in Sweden they are very low, but you have some stuff in Finland too. But maybe you can outline that, break that down.
Yeah, so the fixed cost exactly is G&A and salaries. A very lean team, both in country and corporately, extremely lean team. So you're talking sub $1 million Canadian for the year, for both at site and corporately. And then, in terms of holding costs, you exactly made a great point that, Finland, we have a 20,000 hectare land package OERV. Perhaps we're going to talk about it later.
Yep.
But the holding costs are higher than Sweden for sure. Sweden is, you get your work done, a certain amount of work done. We're talking about $50,000 to $100,000 a year just for holding costs for the entire package we have. So it's a drop in the bucket compared to the package we have. And Finland's probably double that or triple that, even though the land package is smaller. So you're talking circa 300 on there. So it's between the two, it's maybe 1.5 for all the fixed costs you talk about for the year. So yeah.
So 25,000 meters of core drilling and $200. That's US all in, I presume. Generally,
correct. And to be honest, it's probably cheaper. We use that with some contingency built into there. But right now we're actually tracking cheaper than $200 a meter all in with assays. So it's cheaper than I had in Mexico, which was known as one of the cheapest places to drill in. So I am pleasantly surprised by how cost effective it is to operate in the Nordics.
And your contractor, maybe you can speak to them and tell us who they are, where are they from? Right now I think you have one rig mobilized. Are you able to upsize with them, or do you have to use new contractors? Just give a bit of color there. Yeah,
listen, we've been in the region for 10 years, and so has Agnico, so we know all the drillers that have worked in the area and are good in the area. As we press released when we started at the Paubacken project, our drilling a few weeks ago. We have Komadev from Finland operating for us with one rig. We're likely going to go to 2 rigs with them, but there's a couple other drillers that we likely will use because we're going to be drilling 3-4 projects this year. Drilling 10 months a year makes sense. There's a couple of months where it's a little boggy and swampy, so the amount of diamond drilling you can do is limited. But 10, 11 months of the year you're going. So we've got just Komadev now, and we're going to probably upsize to 2 rigs for sure as we continue to expand our program.
Excellent. So if we just break down the budget again, just reiterate, 25,000 meters is what you've put in there, and then you have you guys are doing a huge data set generation with base of till, soil collection. It's not free, it's not super expensive, but can you outline what the non-drilling cost of exploration work is budgeted to be sort of big picture?
Yeah, so listen, it's a great point. Other than the diamond drilling, there's a lot of other exciting work happening, and so the big part of that is the till sampling program we want to do on the remaining, as Adam noted, 40% of the belt that hasn't been sampled, because the initial base layer of work, in addition to doing geophysics over the whole property package, which is now just complete, that was kind of a $200,000 to $250,000 item, and we're going to literally start really figuring out the entire interpretation in terms of geophysics of the belt. But in addition to that is the sampling. So, 25,000 samples over the entire remaining area. We hope that generates 5-6 more brand new multi-kilometric targets that add to the 8 we already have. And I mean, you get the idea, right? We want to continue to fill the hopper with potential targets, exciting targets to be diamond drilled later in the future. So that's about another, $250,000 to $300,000 item. So say $500,000-ish in terms of early stage exploration work. Again, not too costly, but extremely important for continuing to fill up our portfolio for work to be done in future years.
So to surmise, you're budgeting sort of 5 million US on diamond drilling. You're budgeting, say, 1 million Canadian, or I assume you quote it Canadian, which is a very low G&A for a company of your size per annum. It's top tier, actually. So that plus the early exploration work for the full year, you're going to expend just over 6 million US or something like this. Six. That's your budgeting right now. And you went into the year with 8 million euros. So you certainly have the cash to get that done. So you have flexibility in terms of when you elect to finance next time. And while we're on the point, you're doing a listing in Sweden, which is announced, obviously. That's sort of, everyone knows that, which means you're taking in some amount of money there. So you're going to top up a bit more at that event. It's not going to be huge, I presume, but it's so basically cash is good. You're able to do your work, and you have flexibility on when you decide to finance, which is good to convey to investors.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And a lot of this evolves, right? As you know, during the year, we have great success. We're going to expand our program.
Yes.
We're going to need to, as we get bigger, add a couple of new team members. So these are just general high-level run rates. But yeah, definitely in a good position to enter 2026 with what we have and still be able to do a significant amount of work in 2026. We have actually a lot of warrants that are in the money that are now coming in. I think we're already well over $1 million for the quarter that's now come in through warrants, exercise of warrants. And that'll continue through the year. I think in total we have about $6 to $7 million of in the money warrants right now. So, money's coming in, money's being spent, but we're in a very good situation to be able to pick the time and when we need to maybe add to the till. And maybe Adam, maybe we want to touch on this IPO listing in Sweden and the small raise we're considering doing there and the objectives there.
Yeah. Taj, I think to reinforce your point about the warrants, I think we're very focused on what we do every day as a company. So we're not really in the flow of all the different companies and their success or their struggles. And I think what we're hearing a lot of recently is that we've got quite an advantage because of the liquidity of how we trade. Our stock is very liquid. We've got an incredibly wide and supportive shareholder base. We have North American shareholders. We have European shareholders. So when we have warrants in the money, they're actively coming in, and that's indicative of what we did last year with warrant incentive programs and put strategies in place that leveraged our cap table and our liquidity. So any little bit of drilling success, and again this was all of the interest we have in the story is because of the drilling that we're doing now, right? And that's people believing that eventually not just some sort of resolution might happen with Barsele, but you may find a more exciting project. And, suddenly we go find, we pull some decent holes out of this campaign. Our focus goes exclusively to, pushing through a new discovery. And I don't think we're getting any market value today for any of our projects. So listen, we're going to continue to have, I think, access to capital through the way our, stock performs and the warrants we have. We have a listing in Stockholm. I think it's, in the next 3-4 weeks, which is really exciting because that's going to, I think the Swedish shareholder base and the potential of that, given what you've seen happen with other companies listed here and other mining companies that have benefited from it, specifically the Lundins, and how supportive Swedish investors are for projects that are supportive of Swedish people or Swedish projects themselves. So, you've got Europe's, or I'd say Sweden's largest undeveloped gold deposit going public. You've got a time in the world where gold is doing well. So I think we're gonna we'll raise a very small amount here just to simply expand the shareholder base and satisfy the minimum trading criteria of these SDRs. So we've got a few different retail groups that are involved, and I think between now and the end of the year, we're still watching capital flows into the space. You're not seeing very much capital inflow. You're just seeing the recycling of some success. You're seeing a little bit more M&A, but just a little bit of drilling success here after it's an original discovery. We already know it's almost a kilometer and a half confirmed mineralization. So a little bit of success here. We'll go and probably add to the treasury and again expand these programs.
And to put things into context for those who don't know, just to sort of showcase what's happened since about this time last year. The stock was at, what was it, at 12 cents, and it's now at 55 cents. So it's your cost of capital has dramatically decreased, and your market cap is now at about 100 million US or something like this.
But a little bit more than that. I think 150 Canadian. So yeah, a little bit over 100 million US.
Put that into context. I mean, people who know mining exploration companies or mineral exploration companies, there are companies severely smaller than you who are deploying 5 million US, and that hurts shareholders. Actually, it can if it doesn't go well. But for a company that's capitalized 100 million US, deploying 5-6 million US is like, and getting a lot of stuff done and can actually re-rate the cost of capital is impressive. And I think many shareholders would like to see you deploy even more capital if all goes well. So I think it's good to set this stage now before we get into the projects themselves. But one thing that I want to ask, since it's still a sort of high level discussion here, just infrastructure in the Gold Belt and the Skellefteå VMS belt. Speak to that and speak to the people access as well. This is a mining camp, but people who might not be familiar with what it's like there.
Yeah, in terms of physical infrastructure and advantages that we talked about, the low cost power, major highways coming up right to the project. It's fantastic. It's a perfect situation. Eventual operation wouldn't even need a camp. People would be coming in and out as for their shifts. So it's you can't write it better there. What I would say is for people, it's very interesting to see just how good that they are at mining in the Nordics. We're talking about deposits that in Canada probably wouldn't be making money at the grades or the widths, etc., whatever, just generally in the Nordics. And they're able to make money out of it. And an interesting anecdote I talk about a lot is I think 65 or 70% of all underground mining equipment in the world is Swedish. They're just good at mining. They know how to do it, especially this bulk underground mining I talk about. They're very efficient at it, mechanized. So the knowledge base is there. And then the people are there. The highly skilled labor is there. And in fact, it's at a point where we're getting municipalities asking us, please, how can you move this project ahead? We want the jobs. They understand the jobs it can bring and the kind of engine it can turn on for really driving growth in the area. So there's a want there to move the project ahead significantly from the people as well as even the local governments, and the skill and the labor based on what I've seen is there, and they're just very good at it. There's a long legacies of mining here in the Nordics, and they definitely know what they're doing. So that's my take, Adam. I don't know if you have any color on that.
I mean, no, that was great.
And it's sort of funny. We'll turn it over to Benjamin now to get introduced and speak about the high level geological setting. But these things are true, but still we have foreigners like you guys who's actually doing the work and making discoveries, generally speaking, in Sweden. So there's like a disconnect where all of this skill is there, but it's almost like people just have presumed that everything is known about the geology in Sweden and yeah, that's it. And people aren't looking or something like this. But then guys like you come in and make big discoveries and what should have been a much more gold belt or something like this. So it's just funny how it turns out, but it's great.
Yeah, we just to add to finish off on that is like, as you know, like mining in Canada, exploration of natural resources is in our blood. I think Canada and Australia kind of stick out worldwide. South Africa probably too, but Canadians are typically known as very good kind of explorers, as well as moving things on to build. And so a lot of these best practices, we can look at other regions in the world and use them and apply them to move things forward. And even when someone talks to me about all of these countries, especially first world countries, it's the exact same kind of structure and kind of standards you want to operate. Wherever you operate in these other countries, exactly how you want to do it environmentally, socially, you should be applying those in all those other countries and applying best practices from one nation to another. And that's what we want to do here.
And I'll just maybe add that I mean, Taj and I are here today, and we're taking you're giving us wonderful credit for taking on the risk and finding these things. But I mean, like you go back to the 90s. I mean, Barsele was a known target in the 90s, in late 80s. The Geological Survey has mapped out tremendous work across Sweden. And right next to us is the Geological Survey in Malå. If I think 4 million meters of core documented, stored, protected, and there. So, Taj and I are just like in this frame today of this amazing opportunity because we provide a skill set that's needed right now. And, you fast forward 5 years, it could be a group of Swedish miners that are running this deposit and we're long gone. And then the story will be about how they took it into production. So that's what we want. And, likewise, we weren't here 10 years ago. It was a window of opportunity that opened. And like I said, these cycles happen and you've got to, get on the wave at the right time. And hopefully Taj was a master of the timing. So hopefully we're on the right track, right? He's done this before. And I think the window looks great. So yeah, let's dive into the technical and let Ben share his ideas, who's, very excited about all this too.
All right, so we're here with Mr. Benjamin Gelber, and he's the Chief Technical Advisor for First Nordic. And Ben, why don't you start by giving us a bit of an introduction on how you got involved with the company and your career and so on?
Sure. I'm a Canadian exploration geologist, economic geologist. I started my career in the Yukon, working on a whole range of different deposit types, from porphyry copper gold deposits to IOCG uranium to orogenic gold. Following working in the Yukon, I spent 12 years working in West Africa. I started with a company called Keegan Resources. We made a large discovery in the Kumasi Basin in Ghana called the Asasi deposit. Keegan Resources became Asanko Gold, company that consolidated the Kumasi Basin into a 12.5 million ounce mining camp and took that mining camp through development, construction, and into production. Following working for Asanko Gold, I worked with Barrick Gold in the Guyana Shield in South America for 2 years, managing their exploration in Guyana and Suriname. Following working for Barrick, I joined First Nordic Metals, or Goldline Resources as it was called at that time. I have a relationship with Adam Sagilski, who's now the president, and First Nordic had a very exciting district scale land package that I was interested in sinking my teeth into. So that kind of gets you up to date with where I've been and where I am now.
Okay, so let's start with the high level geological setting without getting into specifics of any of the targets or Barsele itself. Just high level where we're at in the world. Why is there gold there? Etc.
Yeah, sure. So the Goldline Belt is located in northern Sweden. It's in the Svekofenian Shield, which is a Paleoproterozoic terrain. This is a fairly classic greenstone belt assemblage. So this is a inverted sequence of metasediments, metavolcanics, and pre-sin and post-tectonic intrusions that have poked through the supercrustal rocks. Um, the gold deposits within the belt are tectonically controlled, so they're shear zone hosted and found within various lithologies along the greenstone belt. The Goldline Belt itself is oriented in a northwest orientation and occurs at the intersection of the globally significant Skellefteå VMS belt, which is in an east-west orientation. So the location of the Goldline Belt's in a very metalliferous and significant area of northern Sweden.
And then maybe you can just mention why we're on sort of the high level discussion here. Just to, I mean, you guys are doing a bunch of target generative work now. Who's been in sort of the last couple of decades? Who's been doing a lot of exploration? Has anyone done rigorous exploration work here before, or has it been, just give some of that history?
Yeah, specific to Barsele, Agnico came in 2015. Oryx kind of was there since 2010 and had done some work, and obviously there were predecessor companies doing some work on the Goldline Belt. But there's actually been limited work. Dragon Mining has been there for probably 15 years. They have the Svartliden mine and mill complex, as well as the Fäboliden deposit. But on the Goldline Belt, it's been pretty limited, I think, Ben. I think there's been a couple of historic, maybe 5-6 historic smaller deposits on the belt. But I think the Skellefteå VMS belt has seen a lot more. I mean, it kind of was a company maker for Boliden. But yeah, I think exactly you're right. 50, 75 years behind other greenstone belts in the world. Yeah,
I think the real opportunity that we see here is the lack of exploration maturity. So where we have had Dragon Mining previously here, we've had a company called Scan Mining, which was a Canadian junior mining company that mined the Blaken deposit, which is located on the Storjukten concession. It's really been Barsele Minerals and a few precursors to Barsele Minerals on the Barsele deposit, then followed by Agnico Eagle and Dragon Mining. So there really hasn't been a lot of feet on the ground on the Goldline Belt for a significant period of time. Exploration's really been going in the belt since the 1990s, and prior to that, not much.
But still, I mean, as we'll see when we dig into it, there's no one who's been doing like systematic base of tail soil sampling campaigns to really cover the entire bloody belt. Obviously, as you're making your discovery. So, but we'll get back into this. So it's just good context.
So one of the reasons why we are so excited about the potential of the Goldline Belt is the exploration maturity. Greenstone belts globally are extremely significant sources of gold deposits, and known to be very prolific. Where you have one large deposit, they generally tend not to exist in isolation, and you find more. In the Goldline Belt itself, the exploration maturity is in its infancy. It's only been really explored here and there since the 1990s. So it's about 100 years behind a belt such as the Abitibi in Canada. And this is significant because the scale of the Goldline Belt is comparable to areas of the Abitibi. And if you take snippets of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt with its 100 years more of exploration activities, systematic exploration activities, you can see the gold endowment of the Abitibi is of a 100-kilometer trend within the Abitibi sits around 200 million ounces, whereas in the Goldline Belt, we're probably catching around 5 million ounces at this point in time. So we think that there is a huge amount of potential in the Goldline Belt that's yet to be discovered. As with the Abitibi, we're dealing with glaciated terrains in the Goldline Belt, meaning that there's probably 95% coverage of the bedrock with glacial till deposits. So this masks the expression of the bedrock below, and makes exploration quite challenging. We see this as an opportunity, and a reason why, with its short exploration history, that there is very likely to be more major discoveries coming out of the Goldline Belt in the future.
And while we're on this topic, can you just explain what the flow of exploration looks like here, sort of step by step, to set that context first?
Yeah, so we take a very systematic approach to our exploration. We lean very heavily on geochemistry. So before we get into the geochemistry, the important thing to understand in any greenstone terrain is the geological and structural architecture of the belt. These deposits are structurally controlled. They're controlled in flexures within structural corridors. They're controlled by zones of structural complexity. They're controlled by lithological contrasts between different geological units, which provide rheological or hardness contrast. And understanding where those structural corridors are within the belt is absolutely fundamental to making discoveries, especially in areas where the bedrock has very limited exposure. So as a baseline, we rely on geophysics. Geophysics we use as a tool to create robust and geologically accurate lithostructural models. So this provides us with the lithostructural architecture in which we target various areas which meet our criteria for potentially hosting ore bodies. Once we've put the coat hangers into the geological and structural architecture, then we rely very heavily on systematic glacial till geochemistry. So we collect a huge amount of samples. In the last year, we collected 17,000 surface till samples. Those get screened and analyzed for gold and gold pathfinder elements. Anomalous areas are then followed up with the top of bedrock drilling technique. This is basically a percussion drill which can penetrate through the 2 to sometimes in excess of 30 meters of glacial till, which sits on top of the bedrock, and drills into the bedrock below, taking samples from the top of the bedrock surface. This is a really tried and tested method that's used all through the Nordics. Significant discoveries recently have been made using top of bedrock drilling, such as Rupert Resources in Finland. So it's a very robust and systematic way of testing the bedrock below. Once targets are confirmed using the top of bedrock drilling technique, then we progress targets to the drilling stage, and they're tested with diamond drilling.
Right, and we'll get back to how this has been successfully executed already, right? In a little bit here, but yeah, excellent. Okay, so we heard Ben give a bit of an overview of the geology in the region, and let's dig into the Agnico question here first of all. So Agnico is your JV partner; they're the operator of the project. You detailed that you have a good communication with them, and they were planning back in the day in 2016-15 that this was going to be their next project to build. And they're an Arctic sort of specialist mining company with many Arctic mines. That's what they do. They do it very well, as you say, one of the most profitable companies in the world. Hitting records quarter over quarter now. Valuation is very strong for them. But they pivoted away to move Barsele forward actively. So can you sort of give a bit of a context? When were they actually doing the drilling work at Barsele? And they didn't publish any advanced engineering, at least for the project that I'm aware of. So can you just give the story of where it sort of, what really happened there back then?
Yeah, listen, they came in 2015. And I'd say 90% of the numbers I told you, 60 million, 65 million spent, 175,000 meters of drilling. I'd say 85, 90% of that was done from 15 to 1920. to 2015 to 2019, 2020, very regularly, $10-15 million a year. And then they embarked on major transactions. They had gotten a Cisco, the Canadian Malartic mine, a couple of years earlier, kind of, I think 16, but they expanded it. And then they acquired, obviously, Kirkland Lake Gold, which had Detour in it. They did a deal with Yamana. They acquired all Yamana's things, and the rest, they consolidated the Canadian Malartic area. So big focus on that Abitibi Greenstone Belt area. They've made another couple acquisitions in the Arctic, Team Resources, which is in Arctic Canada. So they got busy, and I think that's just what it is. They came in 15, 5 billion market cap, I think 4 or 5. There's 70 billion market cap now, right? The criteria of projects, right size for them is different. And just this project, I've seen it before working for Vale, which is bigger than Agnico. Is just some projects they just put them down and they're like, we'll get back to it later. And in this case, it's a joint venture, so that project is actually being moved at Barsele. So it's important for them to look at it now, and they are. But sometimes projects get forgotten. The company gets much bigger, and they said, we'll get back to it later. I think that's what happened here. And I think a couple 100,000 ounces a year for a mid-tier or an emerging major is fantastic. For Agnico, 200,000 ounce a year mine is not going to move the needle for them. But the interesting thing is, if we're able to go find 2-3 more Barseles, now you're talking about 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 ounce a year, one belt, central processing facility, as Adam noted. Then it starts getting very interesting. A region they like, and they've openly and publicly told everyone they love the Nordics. They've got only a few regions they like working in around the world. So I think that's kind of what happened. It just kind of got forgotten, and I think we're here now to kind of take it out and show the world and expose it that this is a mine, and it can continue to get a lot bigger regionally.
Yeah, because obviously the obvious skepticism is that they had it, they didn't decide to move it forward. But I think that tells a good story. And Agnico has a mine in Finland called Kittilä as well. I think it's sort of at 1.5 clicks deep at this point in time. They're mining refractory ore, 3 grams per ton underground or something like that, and that's making pretty decent cash. But what does the team look like? Because they're the operator, right? And they haven't really been drilling then since 2020, say early 2021, or what have they been doing in the interim? Is it sort of care and maintenance, or what does the team look like on the ground from Agnico side of things?
Adam, I'll pass it off to you in a second, but they have a great team there. It's a similar team to what they use at Kittilä for the exploration around Kittilä. But every year they're doing a lot of kind of reconnaissance or regional work around Barsele. I think from what I remember, there's 15, 20 very interesting targets that several of them have even had drill holes in them that they're just doing some work on, early stage work on. Yeah, so the team's busy there, but what I think is, for a company like us and the time that's so right now in Sweden to move projects ahead, the government is so committed right now, it seems, to metals, critical minerals. It's a great time to really move the project forward, and we've heard all this federally, locally. I think the best thing, the real way to add value is move the project towards a development decision. It's already there. There's 2.5 million ounces there. Many mines have started with less than that in the mineral inventory, and we already know that 2.5 million ounces grows quite substantially. It's pretty straightforward, and a very typical thing these underground mines is you show 2.5, you build the mine plan, build the plant, and as you start operating, you continue to add ounces every year because you're getting down there anyway. So it lowers your kind of exploration costs. So, it's like they've been doing work regionally and early stage exploration work, but I think the way to really add value would be to move the project pretty aggressively towards development. Adam, I don't know if I missed something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important point is Agnico still has it. So whatever you think or whatever the people think, they still have it. And they don't have all their projects. They have sold projects recently. And you look at those deals, I mean, I can tell you we've very meaningfully been pulling on Agnico to to talk to us and to work with us and to find a solution. But the bottom point is they still have it. And since they came here in 2015, I mean, what was the gold price in 2015? And how much money did they deploy? Like, when they are ready, they're going to dictate what happens here. But I mean, I think the gold price has moved significantly, and that you may think, okay, that means Barsele is equally or more important suddenly to Agnico. All of their projects are now seeing gold price, significantly increased, and that changes a lot of their continuous plans. They may spend, another 5 years in Canada because the return on capital is far more opportunistic there with the infrastructure they have. So, Barsele they've successfully built and communicated their messaging. They're the best at maintaining those commitments. If you look at all the landowners and all the stakeholders there, they love this company. And whether it's in Finland at our Finland project or here, they love the people. They love the teams that have been built. These are phenomenal, committed people that have a long-term vision. And Agnico does not like to be somewhere where they can't be for the next 50 years because they know the geology is there. They know it's different timing to put it all together. But they don't stay in countries and locations that they can't be there for the next 50 years. And they've said that very specifically.
And I do want to add,
it's sort of wise
think about all the projects in the world. When is it ever the first operator who becomes the builder and the guy who operates the mine? It's usually the fourth, fifth, sixth guy who's now at the project that is the actual eventual guy who operates it and puts it in production. And think about, there's been assets sitting in companies and seniors that you take it out and put into another company, and then you're off to the races. Think about G Mining taking an asset TZ in Brazil out of El Dorado, and that now G Mining is 3 billion market cap or something like that. Think about Lundin Gold. Asset was sitting in Kinross. Lundin Gold pulls it out. That's one of the best gold mines in the world in Ecuador. So there's many examples, many precedents of assets sitting inside a senior, and for some reason or another, it just is not getting the love and attention maybe inside the senior, and you put a dedicated team inside a junior to take it out and move it forward, and unbelievable amounts of value are unlocked, much more than as a percentage than you would see inside the senior.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to incentivization structure, which is, you sort of touched on that earlier, and I think, to me, it's natural in this industry for sure. I do want to clarify then, so the budget right now, are you guys privy to what's sort of ballpark being spent on the project in the last few years? I mean, it's been a low activity certainly compared to 2019, 18, 16, 17 and so on, but what's the spend or communicated spend on the project?
Yeah, no, of course we're privy to all that. It's like, listen, it's on the order of 1 to 2.5 a year. Okay. That's including salaries and the people and the team there, as well as the actual exploration work. So it's been slow, right? COVID happened in 2020. That changed everyone's life for about a year to two anyway. So things slowed down anyway at earlier stage stuff. I think producers obviously focused on making their productions continue, but all their earlier stage stuff slowed down. But yeah, even in the past couple of years, say 1 to 2 million.
Okay. So I guess we should just talk about. I mean, there's no engineering study out on this yet, but we'll just hear your comments on it, Taj. So the level of met testing, you've tested all of the 3 zones. If you put it into sort of 43-101 or whatever, this typical PEA, PFS sort of level of engineering criteria that you have in this industry. Tell us where the met testing is sort of in quality or data density at this point in time in your minds.
Yeah, so first I want to say is Agnico was the operator of this project, so they decide which studies get released. So this project already is at a PEA level already for sure, likely beyond that in terms of drilling. I'm talking about first. But Agnico doesn't really put out PEAs. They kind of go to a PFS or even right to an FS, and that's it. And I believe the statistic is interesting. Is any PFS they put out, the mine that project is built. So they take their time and figure out when to put things out. But the actual level of the project is at PEA and probably likely beyond overall, especially for drilling. I would say for met testing, yeah, you're probably at the same kind of number. Like it's a little bit beyond PEA. I'm a metallurgist, so I like to. If it's a PEA, I probably want to do PFS level testing. If it's a PFS, I want to do FS testing. So I know metallurgy is critical. So that would be something for sure. As you know, if and when we become operators, we do a more extensive program. I think there's actually more optimizations that can take place. But all of the work that makes you feel good that this is clean, simple, free milling sulfide ore, that work's been done. The rest of it's going to be optimization to get our capex and opex lower in the plant.
And the general variability of the deposit, I mean, it's fairly homogeneous. You see the same sort of outcome from the testing from different locations in the deposit.
Correct. Yeah. Listen, it's typically what I would do is a very pretty detailed matrix of tests based on location in the deposit, both by depth, but first by zone, but then depth within the zone, variability testing. Quite a bit of that's already been done. I think the next stage would be, in addition to that, and to do more samples of that, is to do it based on mine life. So years 1 to 2 material, year 3 to 4 material, and continue to get more granularity on the recoveries by year by mine plan. And that would happen when there's an actual mine plan that comes out.
Right. And just to put it into context, you make the Björkdal comparison. That's a mine, underground mine, 200 kilometers to the east or something like this. Mandalay operates it. They're making good money. They're all in sustaining costs like 1,500, 1,600. If you could just compare the met to the method you're seeing, it seems like your metallurgy is superior to what they're seeing in operation right now.
Yeah, like I could currently think that, so they're making concentrate and then sending it off to some smelters. They're kind of high 80s recovery, so still very good.
Yeah.
Our flow sheet looks like it's going to be simpler, kind of crushing, grinding, gravity, and then right to CIL is what an idea it would look like for a flow sheet. So a little bit simpler, but you know, they're kind of high 80s, we're kind of low to mid 90s, so pretty similar stuff.
Yeah. So in that one, it's similar. Maybe you guys are a little bit better in that comparison. And it's good to compare because they're actually operating in the same location, more or less. And in terms of mining methods, I guess, to my understanding at least, and we're not Mandalay here, so we're going to have to be a bit careful exactly how strongly we state these things. But they are mining a bit more narrowly than you guys will be mining, generally speaking, for sure. That much I do know. So if you just make the comp for mining, what sort of costs are they mining at, or you have a sense of that? And then tell us why you think this is a mine, basically. I mean, you guys will combine different mining methods. Just tell the story there.
Yeah, so they release, very good disclosure. They release a technical report on the Björkdal mine every year, it seems. And so their kind of current cost that they put in for underground mining, which is primarily, from my understanding, long hole open stoping, similar mining method to what we'd be using in Barsele, is about $25 a ton US. And they've also put their processing costs and G&A costs. Those numbers are there, and you can work out Barsele's grades, and you can actually come up with a cash cost, right? So, like you said, they're all in sustaining cost, probably $1,500 there. It varies quarter to quarter and based on the head grade at that quarter, but you can actually work out high level what Barsele's cash costs will be, and they're, on the order of probably $1,200 or so. A lot of margin is made when your all-in sustaining costs are $1,200 or even $1,300 per ounce. So if you looked at the same kind of operation I noted in Canada, you'd probably be talking about $35, $40 for the same mining method. Still good. Barsele would still make money at those numbers, but there is some significant opportunities because of the low-cost nature of operating in the Nordics.
And then you speak to the sort of the development path, because these deposits can be styled in different ways, especially when they initially go into production, depending on who's picking them up. So someone might do sort of an open pit. They start small here with you guys, or someone might go full blast and just do underground straight away and style it as a 200,000 ounce, 250,000 ounce thing. Maybe they do that after the resources has been expanded a bit to say 3-4. But can you just talk about the sort of what you could see, which permutations of initial development you could see at this point in time?
Yeah, I think It's as I noted, is there's a few, the Avon zone and Central zone would start as an open pit. The material comes to surface, start cash flow going, pay for capex, and then everything would kind of move underground. I like underground personally, and I think the move is happening to move towards underground. Smaller footprint uh, is the big part of it. So lower capex, permitting's way easier. So I think the way we're contemplating partially now, although if you consider it and look at this, the sections, etc., it's big. You could probably, exactly as you said, depending on the other different conditions, could consider a pit and a bigger pit. But I think the idea and the vision is small pits to get cash flow going. It's fine, and then start going underground to keep the kind of capex low, footprint low, and that's currently how it's being envisioned. Yeah.
And then if we connect that to, permitting, Sweden hasn't been the best sort of climate, as all people in the Nordics will know, and that's probably the chief reason why opportunities like this exist. But people who's close to the country we're seeing a bit of a shift in the conversation and also on the European level for various geopolitical reasons. So it's certainly the right timing in that regard. And you guys have been giving a nationally designated mining area. What does that mean practically? Is there any precedent for that? And what's the promises being attached to it? Which cabinet did give that to the project as well? It's also good to know.
Yeah, it was at the federal level, and all we're understanding is that when you move towards construction, there's an environmental permit and a mining permit. And this mining permit now, because of this designation, that mining permit, the timing of it is going to be fast tracked. At a high level, that's all we've heard, which is great. And in terms of general permitting, the Fabotarn mine, operated by Botany Exploration, started, I think, in August or September of last year. Sweden's newest gold mine, just a little bit east of the Goldline Belt, right close to it, not too far from Barsele. And my understanding is they finished a feasibility, and about 12 to 15 months later, they had a construction permit. So, again, it's pretty clear, it's transparent. I would say it's pretty similar to what you see in Canada, the permitting, from what I can tell. Again, trying to bring the project to as high standards as you can, but there's a real push and support at all levels of government to move projects forward. And I think there was 2 restarts last year of mines, and then there was a brand new gold mine in Sweden. So I think it's just the beginning of things to come.
And Fabotarn is an underground mine, right?
Correct, yeah. It's a high grade, 9 gram per ton, I believe, around there. It starts at surface, but they've decided, exactly as you noted before, to use an underground mining method. It's narrow. You're talking about veins in the meters kind of range. So yeah, it's an underground mine, correct. And they're actually trucking that ore now to the Svartlin mill, which is right beside our Powbacking project, operated by Dragon Mining. That's about a 300 or 350 ton per day, gold cyanide mill, and that's where it's currently being operated. Yep, processed.
And just a comment, because open pits, underground permitting, a bit different. But we do know, at least as one point of there, that Dragon Mining, very close to you guys, they did permit and operate an open pit very close by. So there's these precedents for that. And this is sort of a designated mining area for Sweden. I believe there's not too many close communities that you might have in other places where you have historical mines in Sweden. So it's sort of a location to location game as well. That sort of depends on how the permitting process will drag out or not.
Correct. Yes, Svartlin is open pit. Exactly. It was high grade open pit, and there's several other historic and currently operating open pits in Sweden. So yeah, it's location to location. But again, for me to eventually envision a mine, you're remote enough where there's not really many people around, but you've got great infrastructure. It's really like an ideal location, and it's a mining region. That's lots of lumber there too, but it's a mining region.
So we'll get back to the conversation about Agnico shortly, but as a sort of last hypothetical, let's say that you guys were full in control, hypothetically, this year. What would you guys do with Barsele this year if you were able to decide exactly what was being executed on the ground?
Adam?
I mean, it's a PEA level project. I think the market has forgotten how wide this opportunity is and how exciting it is. So I think if we were in control, I mean, I think a lot of the studies have probably been advanced, pretty spectacularly. I think this is one of the most studied projects in all of Europe. So I think the focus would be to just, share maybe the, economics of where we are today and where we could be, kind of get that messaging to the market while demonstrating that, I mean, we have a 2.4 million ounce resource today. That's an Agnico resource. So you're relying on basically the best gold miner in the world, sharing that information to the market. There are other deposits, regional deposits that are not part of that resource. So I think, you could really quickly get this to 3.5, 4 million ounces on a resource basis and probably get to that level and do a PFS. And I think, Taj, that's really the name of the game, is to show the market the economics definitively. And then that alone, that re-rates the company immediately to, if we were operating it and if we had 100% of it, then, you're at a comparable level to Rupert Resources, where you have a PFS on a plus 3 million ounce deposit that will eventually be a mine because of where we are in gold prices. So I think this would be an exciting year of getting, some engineering out to the market and fast tracking the feasibility study.
Yeah. Just to add to that is, I think First Nordic it's such a interesting story because you've got guys that are ready to move towards development, right? And then that becomes the focus. It doesn't really result in, I mean, you're de-risking the project, so your multiple of your NPV is improving, so that helps your share price. But there's no real thing to rocket your value up, right? But at the same time, when times are tough, those companies that have those projects at that level, they maintain their value because that value's there, and we know that it's eventually down the road going to be a mine. What's interesting at First Nordic is we have that at Barsele, but yet we have 80 kilometers of strike around where you can have that 1, 2, 3 discovery hole hits on a new deposit, and you can really get, a real significant share price appreciation potentially, because of how meaningful it is, right? Because everything you find on the Goldline Belt now, in addition to Barsele, anything, whether it's 30,000 ounces or 3 million, it's all margin because there would already be a plant there. It's all margin. It's all so that's another important thing I think I talk about is a lot of these projects, if they're in the middle of nowhere, they need a critical size. Is it 1 million ounces? Is it 1.5 million? Maybe the first 500,000 ounces pays for capex. But what's interesting here on the Goldline Belt is there's already a deposit there. So any ounces you add on this whole region, again, are all like the criteria for what size you need for a supplementary or satellite deposit is much lower. It's all margin. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yep. And also because it's not like the deep wilds in the Yukon either. So I mean, you have roads literally probably like either way where the project's going to be is like 5 kilometers for some major paved road, and you have electricity there. So it's very favorable for
exactly. Like I couldn't believe it. It's a 1 hour flight from Stockholm to Lycksele, and Lycksele to the project is, what is it, Adam? 45 minutes on a major highway.
Yeah, it's like going for a picnic in northern Sweden. That's how they used to describe it, and that's exactly it. You get in a car, you're 45 minutes, you pull over to the road, walk 50 meters up, and you find a discovery hole. You look to your right, you see the open pit that was there. It's incredibly accessible, highways, power, community. You've got all the ingredients there, which is why sometimes maybe even just moving a project forward, and advancing a smaller operation eventually will lead to a much larger opportunity being unlocked, because you've got the right environment, you've got the right price of gold, you've got the right partners there. We think it's really important to move now and to take advantage of the scenario that we see in front of us and just get over that hump of, advancement, and it could unlock 100 years worth of mining, right?
Okay, so now we'll let Ben sort of speak to the geology a bit more specific about Barsele and some of the other targets close to Barsele. Of course, we'll speak about the extension and so on, extension potential of the existing deposits, but we'll cover that now. And then Ben will cover, targets 1 to 4 in a bit more rigorous detail. Okay, so now, I mean, we've heard Taj and Adam now speak a bit about, or quite extensively about some of the aspects around Barsele. But if we just focus in on the geology here and take a look at, essentially just walk through what the JV package looks like, satellite targets, the main, components of the Barsele deposit, and just take a look at the morphology of what it looks like currently as well.
Sure. So the Barsele JV or JV with Agnico Eagle. Agnico controls 55% of the JV and First Nordic Metals 45%. Agnico Eagle is the operator of the Barsele project. This is a deposit that is significant. It's been identified as significant for the country of Sweden. It's been nationally designated. It's got a nationally designated mining status. What that means in layman's terms is that the deposit itself has been identified as being significant, and the nationally designated mining status basically is a fast-tracking mechanism for permitting. The land package itself is large. It's 25,000 hectares. It constitutes about 1/4 of the entire Goldline Belt land package, and it sits geographically right in the middle of the Goldline Belt project area. Historically, Agnico and Barsele combined have combined for 453 diamond drill holes for 166,000 meters. So significant amount of drilling has been conducted, both on the Barsele deposit itself, as well as several satellite targets such as Risberget, which we see on the screen here. To date, 55 million dollars has been invested by Agnico Eagle. So a significant amount of that has been in the ground exploration with drilling. And First Nordic has a free carried interest in the project, with Agnico being able to earn an additional 15% through completion of a pre-feasibility study. So geology-wise, the Barsele deposit is hosted within two different granodiorite bodies. It's located on a second-order splay off the first-order Goldline Belt structural corridor. So these second-order splays are very important in orogenic gold belts. They're typically the hosts of the most significant mineralization within the belts. And I think what's significant here with the Barsele deposit is that being hosted within a granodiorite body, this body itself has provided the rheological contrast, or the hardness contrast, which has allowed it to deform in a brittle manner, leading to a network of shear zone controlled quartz veins and stockworks of quartz veins that are auriferous, that are gold bearing. Gold deposits, orogenic gold deposits, are known to have very deep roots. These shear zones are deeply penetrating through the supercrustal lithology package, and Barsele deposit looks to be no different. It's currently drilled down to in excess of 550 meters, which is where the current resource comes from. But these deposits are known to continue to depths much deeper than that, into the kilometers. So looking at a cross section of Barsele, so the deposit is made up of 3 different zones: the Avon zone, the Central zone, and the Skirrison zone. There is a gap between the 2 zones, which is undrilled at this point, or a significant lack of drilling between the different zones. The higher grade zones of mineralization have a plunge, as is common with all orogenic gold deposits. This plunge is plunging to the southeast to depth. So where you see these open arrows, that's the orientation of the plunging zones of mineralization. And I think what's significant here is that the deposit's really only been drilled down to a depth of, the current resource is drilled down to a depth of 550 meters on average, which is extremely shallow for orogenic gold deposits. And within that, there's there's a resource of 2.3 million ounces that has been outlined in inferred and indicated categories, and a lot of potential for resource expansion. Take you through some cross-section lines throughout the deposit, throughout the Avon, Central, and Skirrison zone. These are the three main lodes of the deposit. So the first section is through the Avon zone. The Avon zone is going to primarily be mined using open pit mining methods. It is the least significant of the three zones, although it does host a significant amount of gold. The mineralization is hosted within an anastomosing network of shear zones, and those can be clearly seen, I think, in the grade distribution throughout the Avon zone. But what can be seen here is that it's a very wide zone. It's a very wide package of mineralization in multiple different zones within that package. In the central zone, things really start to coalesce within the ore body. The zones become much wider, much more robust, and mineralization is across mining widths of in excess of 50 to 60 meters in places. So very amenable to both open pit and underground mining methodologies, and a very robust ore body as it's drilled, as you can see, drilled down to about 550 meters. In the Skirrison zone, things get really exciting. The mining widths in places are in excess of 100 meters wide. These are continuously mineralized zones. So the central zone and the Skirrison zone are both amenable to open pit and underground mining methodologies. In the Skirrison zone especially, it's amenable to bulk tonnage underground mining methodologies, which brings down the mining cost and increases the tonnage that can be mined.
Maybe you can quickly just highlight this while we're on the subject here. So now we can see the cross sections. Especially, I mean, the open pits is quite clear here. You have a nice width. You can do some nice starter pits. Question is how deep you take those pits. But you speak to these two components, the bulk underground and the open pits. What do you think makes sense when you see this type of ore body?
So Gorm, the Avon zone and the central zone have a small starter pit. Avon's is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And then they move underground, and that's where the bulk of the economics is, even in those zones. And then in the Shearson zone, it's basically all underground. And in terms of the overall ounces, you're talking about, maybe only 300,000 to 400,000 ounces out of the close to 2.5 million ounces is open pit. The starter pit, get the cash flow going, and you move right underground. And you can see from here, underground mines I've been involved with, meter wide, 2 meter wide veins. You're talking about now zones, as Ben had noted, of 100 meters. You're talking about stopes that could be 20, 40 meters effective stopes. This puts it up, the parts of Barsele in kind of line with other major bulk underground mines. For example, several that Agnico have in the Abitibi. Very similar geometry, very similar dimensions, and very similar mining methods. So it's good because now we know, what kind of unit cost can you get? What kind of throughputs can you get per stope? This all information is laid out really well for Barsele because of the analogs, the various analog deposits we see.
Yeah, and you mentioned that previously in the conversation, but now we can sort of see it relating to the visuals here. So it's very
exactly.
good.
As we've been saying about the depth extension of these orogenic gold deposits, these are known to have very deep roots. This is one of the expansion target areas of ongoing exploration at the Barsele deposit. Agnico Eagle's completed surface geophysics. This is a metallotelluric survey, which is basically an EM survey, creating cross sections through the Barsele deposit. As we can see, that this section's through the Avon zone, and what we're seeing is these resistivity anomalies that feed up into the known mineralization close to the surface. These are targets to be drilled. It's not 100% sure what they're mapping. It could be very highly likely that this is the continuation of the granodiorite host rock, which is hosting the mineralization. It can also be reflecting zones of intense hydrothermal alteration, which has changed the characteristics of the rocks. But in any case, what it is showing is that there is a strong indication of continuation at depth in all zones of the deposit. This is now same survey looking through the central zone, and with the central zone mineralization superimposed on it. So these are drill target extension. These are resource extension drill targets that are yet to be explored by either Agnico or First Nordic. So looking at that, in terms of, we see that there's a huge amount of potential for resource expansion with the Barsele deposit. Again, it's drilled to quite a shallow depth for an orogenic gold deposit, and there's two main areas where resource expansion is very, very likely to happen and will be targeted. So one is the gap area between the Avon zone and the central zone. This is a relatively undrilled area, and that's going to be targeted. That can be targeted with up to 10 kilometers of additional drilling. But the main area of resource expansion really comes to depth, and so we see that down to about 1 kilometer depth in the ore body. So that's basically doubling the depth of the ore body. Would take about 50 kilometers of drilling and would have the potential, should these zones, as they often do in orogenic deposits, continue to depth as they do in the upper portions of the deposit, would have a high likelihood of delivering an additional 1.5 million ounces of resource to the deposit. The regional exploration or the exploration brownfields around the Barsele deposits really going to be focused on the structural corridor which hosts the known mineralization. So there's two main areas. One that I've talked about before is the gap between the Avon zone and the central zone. This is a high priority target area for resource expansion. These shear zones, they have a long strike extension, and they continue on. So in terms of near mine resource extension, the western strike extent of the structural corridor hosting the mineralization is a high priority target moving forward for near mine resource expansion. On a regional scale, Agnico has done a huge amount of work, a huge amount of surface geochemistry, huge amount of interpretation of geophysical surveys, and a huge amount of targeting, looking for additional target areas for orogenic gold deposits. This project area also hosts a gold-rich VMS deposit called Barsele Norra, which is located just north of the Barsele deposit itself. As we said before in the intro, the Goldline Belt occurs at the intersection between the Skellefteå VMS belt, forming a bit of a T formation, and so there, in addition to the orogenic gold targets within the Barsele land package, Agnico Eagle has done a lot of work to identify the lithological horizons, which potentially can host more VMS deposits. So, in addition to the orogenic gold targets, which are outlined, which are in yellow, there are many strike kilometers of prospective horizons for VMS targets within the Barsele project area as well.
I mean, you showcase very clearly now the depth potential here, and there's all of these organic deposits they do go on for kilometers of depth, so that's one. You have lateral potential expansion too, but in a bit greater detail here on the regional package. Can you just quote some numbers of, do we have any initial resources, maybe internally at least? Maybe we can't share the figures here, but just give a sense of the advancement of other satellite targets and so on, which you think look quite attractive to potentially pursue.
Well, the most advanced target that Agnico has been developing is the Risberget target. That's where the blue star is here. So this is, you can clearly see the structural corridors of the Goldline Belt. This is a zone of structural complexity here. There's multiple targets around and including the Risberget deposit. Agnico's done a significant amount of drilling in this area. They haven't published a resource on this area, but they do have an internal resource.
Yeah, high level guys, as Ben had noted, it's not been published, but internally, Risberget is a open pit target currently. Starts at surface, about a gram per ton, a little bit more, very low strip, it seems like. So it would be a natural satellite deposit for the main zones of the Barsele deposit. It's on the order of a few 100,000 ounces currently internal resource, anywhere between 250 to 400,000 ounces. And the Nora deposit that Ben had noted is a gold-rich VMS. So in addition to having copper, zinc, lead, I think there's even a little silver there. You've got about the similar kind of 300,000 to 400,000 ounces of gold equivalent, also at Nora.
And the specially designated permit, we discussed that in depth, what that might mean. Is Risberget included there? Because obviously you would want to, you're doing the open pits first in a scenario down the road.
Correct. And really the hypothesis by Agnico is that there is multiple clusters of VMS deposits up in the north because of that Skellefteå VMS belt coming there. And yep. Boliden, some of their best base metal mines were super gold rich, very gold rich. So, that there is a lot to explore up there in terms of VMS deposits. They're great because you get a byproduct credit and of the gold, and you've got base metals. Obviously, the processing would be different. There's quite a few operations nearby that are processing that ore, so that's interesting down the road. But there's definitely something happening up there, and the complexity of two kinds of mineralization, mineralized belts coming together is always interesting to be explored and see what could be there.
If you simply qualify the strength to target, tell us what has been done so far and what the logical next steps are.
Sure. So the most advanced target in the Goldline portfolio is the Aida target. This is a project that was first discovered using regional top of bedrock drilling. Follow-up exploration programs included two small rounds of diamond drilling on the target. And geophysical interpretation of the geophysical data. The interpretation of the geophysical data identified a 4 kilometer long and probably longer to the north structural corridor that coincided with the regional top of bedrock anomalies that were initially identified. So the first round of drilling in hole number 3 from 2021 was what we call the discovery hole along the Aida corridor. In this hole, 22.5 meters of 2.4 grams per ton were intercepted. And underneath hole number 3, 14.55 meters of 2.44 grams per ton were identified. The company then took a step back and did another round of top of bedrock drilling along to delineate the corridor. This was done last year, and in this program we intercepted some of the highest grades in the top of bedrock drilling to date, 5.01 grams per ton in south of the initial discovery hole, and 2.05 grams per ton north of the initial discovery hole. So this now extended the mineralized anomaly along the structural corridor to 1.5 kilometers in strike length. So this is now starting to get very interesting for us. This year, First Nordic embarked on another drilling campaign. We drilled 8 holes in the central portion of the Aida target area for 1,800 meters. That was completed this winter. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great winter this year in terms of freeze up. It was a little bit warmer than we wanted, so we didn't get as much drilling done as we wanted to in the central port on the Aida corridor. But in these 8 holes, some very interesting preliminary results. We're still waiting for assays from these, but in multiple areas where we intersected the intended target, which is the Aida structural corridor, where you see these little yellow stars, these are areas where we intercepted and observed visible gold in the drill cores. So very good indication. The mineralization is continuing down to the south. We're very eagerly anticipating the results to come back, the assays to come back. In the summertime, the northern portion of the Aida target area is accessible for drilling. So we've got about 12 to 15 holes planned in the northern area, and those are planned for the onset of the summer drilling season. So that would be in kind of June of 2025. Drilling will resume on the Aida target in the north. But all in all, we're extremely encouraged by what we see so far. Obviously, the assays will tell the full story, but judging by what we've seen, we've now extended mineralization along this corridor to in excess of 2 kilometers in strike length, with a lot more to explore to the south and to the north. So very, very interesting emerging target here. Taking a quick look at a cross-section through the Aida corridor, mineralization is hosted within a basaltic or mafic volcanic unit that's been metamorphosed to amphibolite rocks. The structural corridor is very evident in the drill core, and this section here is through the hole 3 from 2021. This was the discovery hole, 22.5 meters of 2.4 grams per ton. Including 9.5 meters of 4.67 grams per ton. So very decent grades hosted within the amphibolite unit. Further to the north and to the south, we have seen mineralization hosted within other units as well, and this is always a good sign when mineralization is crossing lithologies. So in the north, we're seeing mineralization hosted within greywacke or metasedimentary units. And to the south, it appears that this amphibolite or mafic volcanic unit is continuing along the structural corridor, and that's where we're seeing the visible gold that we've identified in 2 of the holes to the south.
Very good. So in terms of the size of the anomaly, if you just go back to the 2 slides there. One more slide. There we go. So the size, if we compare this to Barsele, because that's the analogy that's most simple to look at here. So the size of the soil anomaly, this is what we're looking at, a currently defined sort of 3 kilometer in scale strike size soil anomaly. And that's basically the same as Barsele.
Yeah, so the Barsele deposit, the surface footprint to date stretches over 3 kilometers. Mineralization along the Aida corridor is now we've observed mineralization over probably about 2.5 kilometers. So we're getting up on that to that 3 kilometer analogy with Barsele. But I think the interesting thing here is that 1.5 kilometers of this target area is yet to be tested complete, and is also just as prospective as the north. So we're looking at a 4 kilometer long target here, which is analogous, if not bigger than the Barsele surface footprint.
And what's the ETA of confirming the particularly, I guess, southeastern extension here we're seeing north to south approximately there? So the continuation to the south mainly.
Yeah, the southeast extension down here. As we progress down to the south, we get close to a larger existing river, and so we get down into the valley. The depth of the glacial till sitting on top of the bedrock is a bit deeper, and also in this area, as is the case in many areas of northern Sweden, there's a lot of marshy, boggy ground. So this area requires winter drilling, requires a solid freeze up of the ground conditions prior to drilling. And unfortunately, with the start that we got this year, we weren't able to get into this area due to the lack of a cold winter, to put it mildly. And so this area is planned to be drilled, hopefully in a nice cold winter in December, winter 2026.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you this is just, you just have to drill that because you can't. It's too deeply undercover to do bots. You just need to continue to step out, fairly reasonably, and then you see how far it extends.
Yeah, that's correct. It needs to be drilled, and this is a very common thing in all areas of northern Sweden within any given target area. There's going to be some areas that can only be drilled in winter. There's going to be some areas that can be drilled both in winter and in summer. And that really comes down to the access to those areas. It comes down to the ground conditions within those areas. But within the context of Nordic exploration, this is a completely normal scenario.
So the current status of the drilling, I mean, you're basically still going here, right? So, I mean, you have access to the northern portion. So you just tell us where we're at right now.
Yeah, so we've been drilling with a Finnish drilling company called Generative. The drilling in the southern portion is wrapped up due to the early spring onset of the weather conditions down there. And Generative is going to be continuing with the drilling in the northern portion of the Aida target in mid-March.
Okay, so basically now, so very imminently. And then you're able to get back to the south later in the year once it gets more cold, right? And you don't have boggy conditions in certain locations. So that's good. Let's move on to target 2 and essentially the same question, target 2 and 3. So qualify the strength of these targets again. So outline scale compared to, say, Barsele and target 1. What has been done so far? What data do we have right now? And what's the logical next steps of continuing to understand what's going on here?
Yeah, so great. So targets 2 and 3 are called the Brokojan and Harpsund target corridor. These 2 targets lie along a second order splay coming off the first order structural corridor of the Goldline Belt. That's in this black line, which is drawn here. That's interpreted from geophysics and from field observations. This corridor is very, very clearly identified in outcrop. It's a strong structural corridor. And historically, work that's been done here is really focused on surface geochem, also some rock sampling. Work done by our partners EMX identified a strong gold in till anomaly over the Harpsund deposit. This was followed up on by First Nordic with an extensive superficial till soil sampling anomaly. That campaign identified a 5-kilometer trend, interconnected trend of anomalous gold pathfinder elements. So this is an arsenic, gold, copper, zinc, and moly anomaly that stretches over 5 kilometers in 2 distinct zones. So this winter, we conducted a top of bedrock follow-up drilling program on these targets. In total, just wait a second.
126, I think.
In total, 126 top of bedrock holes have been completed at Harpsund and Brokojan. The results have all been sent for analysis, and we're eagerly anticipating receiving those results and planning follow-up programs on these targets.
Okay, so the first question here for me is I mean, you have this arsenic, copper, moly, zinc anomalies. Do you see those pathfinder elements as well in targets 1 and historically in Barsele as well, or is this a bit different, or is it the same sort of mineralogical makeup?
It seems to have a very similar metallic signature to Barsele. Barsele has a polymetallic signature. So that seems to be fairly that seems to be very consistent with ore deposits across the belt. Arsenic is a very, very common orogenic gold pathfinder element. And what we're seeing in deposits within the Goldline Belt itself is that chalcopyrite, that's copper, pyrrhotite, that's zinc, are also associated with the metal signature of the orogenic gold deposits.
Yeah, and you're waiting now to get the gold assays back in full from the labs.
Yeah, that's right. We're waiting to get the gold assays back from the top of bedrock drilling. Those will be multi-element analysis that's been done. So we'll get gold and all the orogenic gold pathfinders, and that's hopefully gonna lead us into some pretty nice drill targets for summer.
And scale here combined. I mean, now we don't have the gold yet, but we have the pathfinder, so we'll likely see the gold. But we'll wait and see here. But scale-wise, this is one target, right? I mean, it's like calling 2 of the different zones at Barsele as different targets. It's like Brokojan and Harpsund is one continuous thing if there's gold there. So the scale is actually larger. So wait and see for the gold, but it looks to be larger initially here than Barsele and or even target 1.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the scale that you want to see for a significant orogenic gold deposit. We're looking at an anomaly over 5 kilometers here. This is along the down ice orientation, so we're not looking at cross ice or anything like that. 5 kilometer. This is multi-kilometric. It's very wide, very robust, and very long anomaly. So, in excess of 1 kilometer in width, and 5 kilometers in length. This is that's a very robust and exciting orogenic gold target.
And generally, with being able to start drill testing, some locations, like it's the same story as target 1. We don't need to get into details, but some place you'll be able to start in H1 as you outlined there in the slide, and some locations likely will be towards H2. I mean, irrespectively, you'll only do 1 drill rig here to start, so it's like you're constrained by that.
Yeah, that's right. As I said, on all targets, especially large ones like this, certain portions are able to be drilled in the summertime and the wintertime. Certain portions can only be drilled in the wintertime due to ground conditions. So that's no different here at the Brokojan Harpsund corridor. So we are planning to commence drilling in the spring of 2025.
Excellent. Okay, let's take a look at target 4 as well then.
All right, target 4 is on the Storjukten project. It's right in the center of the Storjukten project area. This is also an area that was initially identified by our partners, EMX. EMX conducted a ionic leach surface till sampling program here and discovered a large golden till anomaly. This was followed up by First Nordic with an extensive surface till sampling program. This delineated another large anomaly over 5 kilometers in the down ice direction. And again, the metal signature of this anomaly is gold and yellow and with arsenic, copper, zinc, and moly pathfinder elements associated with it. So another large, robust target. This lies along a second order splay coming off the main first order Goldline structural corridor. And this winter we drilled 66 top of bedrock drill holes here. Again, some of the areas are accessible in the winter, some areas accessible in the summer and winter. So we're getting all of the winter accessible areas drilled. There's currently a bot rig drilling on the Nippas target. So we have 120 holes planned here. Whatever we don't get done in the winter time here will be just continued on after spring thaw in the summertime. But a very, very exciting looking target.
So I mean, we see the scale here again. It's like 4 clicks, and you have a sort of a parallel thing developing there, which you need to step out on, obviously, because these soil samples are still showing an anomaly, but you haven't collected the full data set there, as you mentioned. So it's this can get even bigger. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're seeing, Gorm, in the sampling that we're doing, the Storjukten project is only 50% covered in sampling. We've taken about we've collected about 23,000 samples from the Storjukten project area. It's a large project area. It's over 25,000 hectares. But what we're seeing is that along these structural corridors that we've identified, we are seeing multiple anomalies in multiple places. And so off to the west of the Nippas target here, we're showing the arsenic mineralization or the arsenic anomalism here. This is an emerging target area. This is along the first order structural corridor, and this is within a big flexure. So all of this in 2025, we have another 24,000 surface till samples that are planned to be collected on Storjukten. And all of this blank area that you're seeing here is all going to be infilled. And, we're very confident that our already robust project target pipeline is going to be filled up with even more.
So as a final exercise, let's go into GIS and let's just see, so people can get a sort of geometric sense of where you've collected this data so far, and they can actually see where you've yet to do it and what you won't do the full job this year, but you'll do a lot of work, right? So you showcase approximately what you're expecting to cover, what has been covered, what will remain to be covered after this year, and then also highlight some of the other targets that you like that is not target 1 to 4.
So Gorm, in terms of coverage of the Storjukten and Palbacken areas for surface geochem, 2024 really focused on the southern portion of the Storjukten project area and the central portion of the Storjukten project area. It's a little bit hard to see at this scale, with a small amount of sampling taking place also in the northernmost portion. So we've covered about 50% of the total project area, and we've got huge gaps within the north central portion of the project area and the south central portion of the project area. So another 24,000 samples approximately to be collected in 2025 in the summertime, commencing right after the thaw. Out of this data set, out of the sampling that has been done in the south, central, and north, we've got 4 additional targets, additional to the Nippas target, which we've identified here. 3 of those targets are down in the south, and 1 of the targets is up in the north. And again, these are arsenic, copper, zinc, and variably molybdenum coincident anomalies in the surface in the surface till. So very, very exciting. It seems that everywhere that we're targeting these structural corridors, we're developing targets, and it's a very, very large project area. As I said, 25,000 hectares with 40 kilometers of strike length of the Goldline first and second order structural networks. And so it's going to be an exciting year for Storjokten in 2025 as we continue to build on that project pipeline there. Down in the Palbacken project area, the whole central and northern portion has been covered with surface till sampling. The Aida corridor target area down in the south, the bottom third of the Palbacken project area remains to be tested. We're going to test that with about 10,000 additional surface till samples in 2025. So we're confident there that on parallel structural corridors we're gonna see some additional anomalism to follow up on there as well.
So to surmise then, at the end of this year, or maybe early 26, you'll have covered the vast majority of your land package with initial data generation. So you'll have sort of a good sense, at least of where the big semi-surface expressive anomalies will be, to bedrock or something like this.
That's right. I mean, this is the foundation for our exploration programs is the surface till sampling. To this basically takes us from 25,000 hectares, down to 10,000 hectares that are most highly prospective, and so it's an incredibly important part of our exploration system in order to vector into the most prospective areas. So this again is an overview of our targets on the Storjokten project area, highlighting the areas that have not been sampled in the central north and central south areas. Emerging targets around Nippas, the Nippas target itself, as well as the 3 additional targets in the south that have been identified. These are all along identified structural corridors within the supercrustal rocks. So these are arsenic, copper, and zinc coincident anomalies, and a very strong anomaly over about 1.5 kilometers up in the north of the Storjokten project area. And this again, very strong arsenic, copper, and zinc anomaly up there. So a nice, robust pipeline of projects being developed, and very excited for what comes in 2025.
So now we heard about target 1 to 4, very exciting stuff. The footprint preliminary data of all of these targets. I mean, target 1, you already have several excellent discovery holes there, and you're going to release some more here, proving out potentially a 3-click scale already, which is very interesting, obviously. And then you have 3 more targets that have similar footprints in the soils already, as if you compare it to Barsele. I mean, some is even larger, I guess. So it's really successful and interesting. But again, just to summarize, in terms of diamond drilling, how much do you plan on getting done this year? And of course, some areas is difficult during the summer and so on, because it is like a real bog issue. You hear the same thing in Finland, but throughout this year, you're planning on doing 25,000 meters just across these 4 targets. How are they split approximately between the 4 at this point in time?
Yeah, listen, this is our goal is about 25,000 meters over at least the 3 projects. So Aida, Harpsund, but Harpsund is effectively 2 targets, Brokojan and Harpsund. So there's 2, so maybe just 4 targets. And then Nippas. So that's 25,000 meters is over those 4 targets. High level, it's 5 to 10,000 for each of them. And our kind of strategy or methodology and all this is do the first 5,000 meters, about 20, 25 holes, and go from there. And then we'll adjust as we go through. So that's how we're really approaching it. It's an overall allocation, probably equally split up amongst the projects. But to be honest, if we have huge success at Aida and we need to immediately do a second phase of drilling, more than the 10,000, we'll bring another rig in and continue, right? Because we've got the momentum. So, yeah, I would say that 25,000 is subject to change, but it's very probably equally amongst the three main areas: Aida, Harpsund, and Nippas. And then we're going to do lots of base of till drilling on these 4 new targets, right? We're going to have to do base of till drilling there, get gold values, and then get them ready for diamond drilling in 2026.
But just to set correct expectations, I mean, Aida, you're drilling there right now, and to my understanding, speaking with Ben, some parts of these projects you can do full year drilling, but other parts, so it sort of depends on where you're at the structure. Some parts are literally really difficult because it's a literal bog when it's not frozen, so you can't drill there for some parts of the year. So I presume one should expect that most or a good chunk of the planned 25,000 meters would be sort of back half of the year towards when it starts to get cold again. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, but it's exactly as you said. There's some parts that for sure you can do in the summer. So it's a matter of us now planning and saying we'll do this project in these months, and the ones that we need a little bit more frozen ground because it's boggy, we do those in the winter months. So yeah, it's a matter of planning, but considering the amount of targets and the kind of how each of them, the months that each of them can be drilled in, I think we're going to just have continuous flow and coverage for the year. Probably you're right, like the back end will be a little bit more, but I mean we're already started and having very productive shifts of drilling at Aida. So.
And then I want to ask about the 100% land package. EMX was involved there, and they are a pretty good prospect generator in jurisdictions that are neglected for one reason or another. So I presume that they have a royalty on this ground. Could you just clarify what that might be?
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, they were the original project generator here, so they do have a overlying 1% royalty. We've leveraged their technical teams from the beginning. This opportunity was, like I said, in its earlier phases, an EMX early stage project, land grab, and they did it based off of, the way that the claims work in Sweden. You drop these projects, they sit in a moratorium for a year, so you've got time to get your understanding, and then, EMX, they became the original land acquirer and ultimately carry a 1% royalty across all the projects that we own in Sweden.
And that's just to clarify, that's on the original Goldline properties. So all on our 100% ground, that's EMX, 1%. On Barsele, Agnico currently has a ROFR on 2% NSR. So this could change as we continue to negotiate and figure out a new plan for Barsele. But yeah, I wanted to be clear here. EMX has it on the 100% owned properties, and then on Barsele, it's Agnico's got a ROFR.
So, on the topic of renegotiating the structure with Agnico and so on, and you guys doing work that sort of puts this into the big boy category in terms of scale. I mean, Agnico, they're not stupid. They can see what data you've generated, and I bet they're interested about that. As Adam said, they're still holding the project for a reason, right? I mean, that's a very good point. So I guess the only way I can ask this question that is appropriate is, what do you guys think that is the best outcome for both companies in your view? I think that's a fair question that could be answered. What structure do you think is the best from your point of view for both companies?
I mean, I think I'll start, Taj. I think the most important thing with these situations as joint venture partners with Agnico, it's what's good for the project. Ultimately, what's good for the project is good for the success of both parties' interest in the joint venture. And we have our goals and we set our plans for what we would like to do in 2025 and 2026, and Agnico does the same thing. So it's just a question of seeing if those goals can be aligned. But what's good for the project is good for the underlying value and the opportunity to create 1,000 jobs, 2,000 jobs. So I think Agnico is very cognizant of what's good for the project, and I think we were very supportive of that. And I think, given the size of it, and given for Agnico to go and build a deposit here, as Taj, you said, about for a 200,000 ounce production facility might not be the right time. So if it makes sense, I think having someone driving this thing forward and showing the growth potential of the deposit is incredibly important, and that's what we're working towards.
And I would say, guys, it's what's good for the project right now, based on what we're seeing, is what's good for the project socially is to move it ahead now. But we're getting weekly calls, meetings monthly with people that matter and who can actually move this project forward, and they want to move it forward now for all of the different factors we talked about. So it's a project that's already hit the criteria to move forward to be a mine. Socially, it's the right time. Gold price, we know it's the right time. So, it is the right time to move it forward. And whether it's jointly moving it forward, whether it's just them moving it forward, or whether it's us moving it forward with them as a big shareholder, all of the options work fine. It's again, as Adam noted, what's good for the project, which is what I think makes this an interesting opportunity. Either one of the three things I just mentioned or pathways are all going to be good for the project, which will unlock value, de-risk the project, and advance it.
And I think let me just add, it's also, I think for Agnico, they want to know that they've got a partnership with people that are doing the right things on the ground. And, as Taj said, the various, we continuously communicate with all levels of government and constituents. So, I think sharing data and working collaboratively with their technical teams, they've been on the ground for a long time. So we've got a great partnership on aligning our data sets and making sure that they have all the information that is relevant to the decision-making longer term. So it's a great partnership. And I think it's just a matter of time to just figure out what's the right way to move things forward for, the timing and the business plans of both companies.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, one permutation, which is what's been happening for the last few years, is that Agnico is essentially incubating this in sort of a stage of indecisiveness, or not necessarily indecisiveness, just a function of other priorities in their big portfolio, right? So I think if you just take a look at that and say, okay, from their sort of pragmatic stakeholder or just shareholder value creation point of view, probably makes sense to restructure it in a way where they have an interest, because clearly they want to maintain an interest because they're still holding the project, right? So to transmute it in a way where the development is accelerated while they maintain an interest. And from my point of view, it seems like that should be, and I also presume they're interested in having exposure to a large, huge land package where you're actually generating new discoveries of similar size. So maybe the easiest thing, seems to me, is for them to convert their ownership into more equity in First Nordic Metals and get them to 19.9, I'm not sure, and then probably would have to pay a bit some cash or something like that. That would, to me, seem like to be the most attractive thing for all parties. Would you agree with that assumption, or can you just explain, like, practically which permutations you think would be best for all? Because now you're saying sort of general stuff, but translate into deal terms, what you think would be most attractive.
Yeah, listen, this deal was originally announced in 2021 with the predecessor company, Barsele Minerals and Agnico. Now, Barsele didn't have any of the Goldline ground.
Yep.
Which I think changes things for Agnico in a favorable way for what they want to see. They're really they're very excited about the drilling we're doing for sure on the belt. I know that. They like regional plays. They like new discoveries, as they've done throughout the evolution of their company. But listen, the original deal was exactly as you said, right? The Barsele Minerals, now say First Nordic, takes full operatorship, 100% of the project level. The remaining part gets converted to equity. It was 19.9, and then some royalty, part of which can be bought back in the future. So, some kind of structure like that that feeds off the old deal, the old proposed deal, would be interesting for sure.
So that's the base case, most attractive permutation from your side's point of view, and you also think it's the best for all stakeholders, effectively, is what you're arguing.
Yeah. Adam, I don't know. You want to add some comments?
Yeah, listen, we see the world one way and they see it a different way, right? And we don't always have the benefit of understanding the way they see things. We just see the transactions that happen, and the subtleties of those transactions are dependent on the relationships with those people, how Agnico if Agnico did a merger and acquired an asset, a group of assets, some of those will not be core to Agnico, and they're going to move them on, and they're going to give that opportunity to other companies. But Agnico spent $60 million here. This is their spend. These are their decisions. It's their proprietary technical information that they've developed. So I think it's best if they could become supportive shareholders and they become large shareholders, and we move this forward collaboratively. They've got an incredible team there. I mean, they're one of the best teams that have been built, I think, in this region. So there's definitely. We would love to see them as continuous shareholders and be able to say that we've got the best mining company there in the future. You could also look at sort of just a difference in the joint venture deal that less capital intensive, but allows us to go and drill and show the market how great this asset is, and that's really great for shareholders too. And then the beauty of that is the projected capex of this project would be $400 million, say, depending on, I don't know where we'll be in a few years when that happens, but you have Agnico there for half of it already. Like it just moves forward very easily from that point. So I think any and all scenarios that see the project being advanced is a great outcome for all the constituents. So, and we're sharing and reviewing all the different permutations that we think they would like. So I'm sure it's very clear. Like Nico's very specific on how they operate. This is what is going to happen, and unfortunately, you're dealing with the partner that has control of the project. So our shareholders will benefit from any and all scenarios that change the current situation.
And what probability would you assign to that happening this year?
I think very high probability.
Yeah,
I think
I told you, Gordon, probably I was hoping for a first half of this year item. Sorry to interrupt, Adam, but yeah, very high probability during 2025.
Okay, perfect. I think this gives a very good overview. So we haven't spoken about the Finnish assets. You don't really mention them in your presentation either. So it's clearly a backseat sort of thing now on the back of this exploration success in Barsele and so on compared to Sweden. That much is clear. But can you just speak to your plans? I mean, are you going to invest some capital there to drive those forward? Would it be a dual track? Will you look to transact them? What's sort of the baseline thinking on this now? Just to cover it.
I think you're getting zero value for this Finnish asset. And I think, we've had tremendous interest. There's been a ton of inbound of people wanting to do something with this. And I think we've just got to be strategic in how we advance our existing projects. And, in the storyline of how all this evolved, we were on the Goldline Belt. We had a proprietary land position. We were doing early exploration. We were developing our targets. And then through the relationship with Henrik Lundin and, Eric Jensen and some of the early bankers, we just had this opportunity to add 300,000 ounces in Finland of an entire greenstone belt, creating two, a portfolio with two entire greenstone belts predominantly in our control. So it was an important time to add asset, and we've nurtured that in that relationship. We've maintained those payments. We've built a relationship with Agnico where they're now equity holders here. And it's a very special project. So we're going to be very selective on what we do, and whether that's drilling it ourselves. I think just you have to prioritize all the work around Barsele now, because now you have Barsele and you have all this land around Barsele. And so the greatest value I think we can create is demonstrating to Agnico, the continuous, opportunities on the belt and devoting our investments there. So we're not going to, make a decision lightly, but there is tremendous value to be created off that asset. And I think you're going to see some very exciting opportunities unfold from that for existing shareholders.
So it sounds like most likely, but you like the project. You're not just going to sell it for a couple of $1 million US or something like this. That much is what I'm hearing. So it sounds like it's going to be a joint venture when the time is right. Is that sort of a fair estimation? Because you don't want to allocate bandwidth nor significant quantums of capital necessarily at this point in time to try to dual track.
Yeah, I think what's key is that project deserves significant investment, and whatever partnership we develop or whatever we decide, it won't be done with just a small program, we're going to make sure that that project is tested effectively, because there's tremendous value that can be created very quickly on that project. So, we're going to be very selective on our decision making there, because we're the ones that have bought this originally. We're the ones that have survived through difficult times in the market to keep the relationship strong with Agnico, and Agnico has all the land relationships. Remember, Agnico has maintained those relationships for, I think, over a decade now. So you don't treat that lightly, and you make sure that you're working with the appropriate constituents to do the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's I just want to close off on Oyarvi. Is like it's an entire greenstone belt. So it's close to 20,000 hectares. One part of it's really been worked on. 15,000 meters. That's a season of work. And you've already got over 300,000 ounces of high-grade material starting at surface. Very high potential. It needs its own team, drill ready, permitted. So we have a great plan for that.
Okay. And again, do you think that will materialize this year? Or a bit more uncertain on that?
Yeah, definitely this year.
Okay. Very good. So the final question, gents, we always ask. I'm picking the time frame of 3 years this time. So where would you like to see the company in 3 years from now?
Okay, I'll go first. 3 years from now, Barsele will be moving towards construction, or in the middle of construction, and there'll be 3 other Barseles on the belt. That's where I'd want to see the company. So that's the vision of the camp. And Finland will be its own thing, but just for the Goldline Belt, Barsele's moving towards production, and there's 3 other multi-million ounce deposits sitting on the belt. And as I say this, and we're all laughing a little and all that, but it's a realistic vision. I think that is the vision of the company.
Yeah,
I don't want to comment on the price of gold either, where it's going to be in 3 years. But I think it's going to be a lot higher than where we are today.
Yeah, that will be a boon, but with what you can control, allocating the capital to make 3 more discoveries and advancing Barsele, and then putting work into the Finnish assets, I mean, that sounds like a very attractive investment proposition from $100 million US right now. So guys, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to staying close and following up on this company. So we'll end it there.